In standard forensic practice, autopsies document physical evidence, but cannot capture intent or consciousness. This case presents a documented anomaly, where a decedent appears to have planned communication through the autopsy process itself. The mechanism involved pre-mortem actions, designed to be discovered and interpreted during the post-mortem examination. This contrasts with typical forensic findings, which are usually passive results of trauma or disease. The pattern suggests a deliberate attempt to bypass the finality of death to convey specific information. Such cases are exceptionally rare in the medical literature, highlighting the unique intersection of human agency and forensic science. Journalists in high-risk regions often face threats when investigating corruption and organized crime. This reporter understood the dangers and took precautions, similar to others in his profession. The mechanism of leaving evidence on one's own body has historical precedence in forensic investigations. In such cases, the body itself becomes a crime scene, containing crucial information for investigators. This pattern appears in cases where victims anticipate violence and plan posthumous communication. The reporter's actions demonstrate how individuals in extreme situations use available means to convey information. Forensic science allows such clues to be analyzed through established investigative procedures. This approach contrasts with supernatural explanations, remaining grounded in documented human behavior. This case demonstrates a documented pattern where journalists in high-risk environments implement extraordinary security measures. The focus here is not on supernatural elements, but on premeditated forensic countermeasures as a survival strategy. Credible investigative sources have reported the core facts of this case as methodical and systematic. The mechanism involves specific precautions taken before potential threats materialize in dangerous assignments. This represents a case study in how professionals anticipate and prepare for forensic challenges in hostile environments. The documented pattern shows similar security protocols across multiple high-risk journalism cases globally. These measures are designed to preserve evidence and maintain operational security under extreme pressure. The systematic approach distinguishes this from random events, showing deliberate planning and execution. The victim had clearly articulated a specific fear regarding the individual or group under investigation. He explicitly told colleagues that if he were found dead, it would not be an accident. This indicates a pre-existing awareness of potential lethal threat, a pattern seen in other cases where investigators become targets. The critical element was his subsequent plan, which was built on one core assumption. He assumed his body would undergo a standard post-mortem examination, known as an autopsy. This is a standard forensic procedure intended to determine cause and manner of death. His plan was therefore designed to communicate through the very process meant to investigate his death. This creates a grim form of posthumous testimony, leveraging standard investigative protocol against itself. Standard forensic examinations routinely collect fingernail clippings or scrapings to analyze trace evidence. This evidence can include skin cells, blood, or fibers that may have transferred during an altercation. In this case, the individual intentionally placed specific evidence under their own fingernails before an anticipated attack. According to some accounts, this planted evidence was a unique fiber from a carpet. Other accounts describe it as a distinct material linked to a suspect's vehicle or home. This pre-placement of evidence represents a deliberate attempt to manipulate the forensic investigation. Such actions complicate investigations by introducing potentially misleading trace materials. Forensic science must then distinguish between legitimate transfer and deliberately planted evidence. The material found under the victim's nails was not something that would naturally be present in that environment. This suggests deliberate placement rather than incidental transfer during a struggle. The individual documented this plan in advance, creating a sealed note with specific instructions. This note was left with a trusted contact or in a secure location for safekeeping. The instructions specified that if the individual were killed, investigators should pay particular attention to the material under the nails. This material was deliberately planted to point toward the killer, serving as a form of post-mortem evidence. Such premeditated evidence placement represents a calculated attempt to ensure justice even after death. This approach demonstrates awareness of forensic investigation procedures and how evidence is typically analyzed. The victim's murder confirmed his own prediction, setting the plan in motion as he had foreseen. During the autopsy, unusual material was recovered, physical evidence that would become central to the case. This material, by itself, might have remained just another trace clue without further context. However, the victim had prepared a pre-written explanation, providing the necessary framework to interpret the evidence. This document transformed the unusual material from a mere clue into a direct accusation, linking it to the perpetrator. Such premeditated documentation is rare in criminal cases, where evidence typically emerges reactively during investigations. The finer investigative details that followed, how authorities verified and acted on this accusation, remain largely unknown. This gap highlights the limits of public knowledge, where official procedures often obscure specific steps taken. Public records often lack definitive connections between investigative clues and legal outcomes. This absence of clear documentation is common in cases involving complex investigations. The full narrative frequently becomes obscured by the same systems or entities under scrutiny. This pattern of information obstruction occurs across various types of investigations. A significant misunderstanding is treating any single clue as a guaranteed resolution. Investigative journalism typically involves piecing together fragments rather than finding definitive answers. The process resembles analyzing patterns within incomplete datasets. This reality contrasts with fictional narratives that promise clear conclusions. This type of high-risk maneuver is typically considered only when all conventional options have been exhausted. Such desperate measures often involve calculated trade-offs between potential benefits and significant dangers. Forensic evidence contamination can occur through improper handling, environmental exposure, or cross-transfer of materials. Critical evidence is sometimes overlooked due to human error, bias, or limitations in available technology at the time. A written explanation of such a plan serves as a crucial record, but its preservation depends on multiple factors. Documents can be physically lost, damaged by the elements, or deliberately destroyed to conceal actions. Even if found, a note's credibility may be questioned based on its source, context, or lack of corroborating evidence. This creates a scenario where understanding the full truth relies on fragile, interconnected pieces of information. The presence of gloves at a crime scene indicates a deliberate attempt to avoid leaving fingerprints. Scene alteration by perpetrators is a documented pattern in criminal investigations to misdirect authorities. Unlike carefully planned traps, desperate measures often contain inconsistencies that forensic analysis can reveal. Post-mortem narrative control attempts are typically less effective than pre-planned deception strategies. This approach reflects a common investigative challenge, distinguishing between intentional staging and genuine evidence. Avoiding romanticization maintains focus on factual analysis rather than sensational speculation. This was not a clever, gotcha moment from beyond the grave. It was the tragic, calculated action of a person who lived with a tangible, daily fear of being silenced. This scenario illustrates a psychological state of sustained threat perception. The fear of being silenced can drive individuals to create permanent records of their knowledge or concerns. This behavior pattern is observed in various high-stakes environments where information control is a factor. The practical insight here is about the psychology of threat management. Threat management involves constant assessment of risks and potential countermeasures. When individuals believe conventional channels are compromised, they may resort to unconventional safeguards. This creates a documented trail intended to survive beyond any immediate personal danger. This case represents an extreme endpoint of a security mindset, planning not just for survival, but for the investigation of your own murder. For journalists and activists in perilous situations, such contingency planning, including secure, dead man switches for documents and instructions, is a grim reality. A dead man switch is a security mechanism designed to automatically release information if the user fails to provide periodic confirmation of their safety. This practice shifts evidence from being passively discovered to being actively deployed by the victim posthumously. From an investigative standpoint, it challenges a fundamental principle: that evidence on a victim's body is passively transferred. Traditional forensics often relies on trace evidence left unintentionally, but this proactive planning creates a new category of deliberate, post-event testimony. It inverts the typical dynamic, turning the victim into an active participant in their own case after the fact. This creates a unique investigative pathway where digital and physical security protocols intersect with criminal procedure. This case introduces the possibility of active evidence placement by the victim, which complicates the forensic picture. This demands that investigators ask new questions about the victim's own actions and precautions taken before the incident. Ultimately, this story is less about a single crime and more about the lengths to which individuals go to ensure the truth survives them. It highlights the pervasive dangers faced by those who expose corruption in various systems and institutions. The stark, clinical measures they may contemplate involve systematic documentation and evidence distribution protocols. These measures ensure their work and the identity of their attackers does not die with them, creating a posthumous accountability mechanism. Similar patterns appear in cases where whistleblowers establish fail-safes before confronting powerful interests. This forensic complication represents a deliberate strategy against evidence suppression, forcing investigators to follow trails the victim intentionally left. The real horror isn't supernatural. It's the very real conditions that make such a plan necessary. This statement applies to many documented incidents where environmental factors created life-threatening situations. Human survival plans often emerge from predictable patterns of environmental stress and resource scarcity. Historical records show that extreme isolation combined with physical hardship can trigger desperate measures. The mechanisms involve basic human needs: shelter, warmth, food, and the psychological impact of prolonged stress. Comparisons can be drawn to documented survival scenarios in polar expeditions, maritime disasters, and remote wilderness incidents. These patterns demonstrate how ordinary people can be driven to extraordinary actions by environmental pressures. The focus remains on documented human behavior in response to verifiable environmental challenges.